In this video, we will learn how we can set up a custom webhook for Shopify using PHP. And to test our webhook, we will be using a very nice tool called ngrok. With the help of ngrok, we will be exposing our local server and making it publicly accessible so that it can be used as a webhook endpoint. You can download ngrok from ngrok.com/download, or you can click on the link in the description below. Speaking of webhooks, webhooks are a great way to perform some specific tasks automatically. Webhooks are endpoint which listen to a request with a specific set of headers and a body sent by a server, in our case, Shopify. In Shopify Webhook documentation, you can read more about it right here. I will have this link in the description as well. We will also visualize how the data is being sent to our webhook and how we can use it to perform further actions. Okay, so let's get started by setting up ngrok and making our local server accessible for the webhook. Make sure that your local web server is already running and the address localhost or 127.0.0.1 is available. So in my case, my web server is already running. I'm using Laragon as my local web server. Once that's done, navigate to the folder where you have downloaded ngrok, unzip the folder, and then you should see an executable file in there. In my case, it's right in here. Setting up ngrok is quite simple. All we need to do is type in the specific command, which is ngrok http, and the port, which is going to be 80 in our case. If you want, you can learn about this and other ngrok's command in depth in their official website, which I do recommend. As you can see, it has now provided us with some new URLs. Let's take a look at the web interface URL. From this URL, we will be able to see all the requests that are being made to these public URLs. Speaking of which, one of them is secure and the other one is not. All we care about is the secure one, so we will be using this as our endpoint. So before that, let's try to open the web interface URL and see what do we get. So I'm just going to copy this and open it right in here. So as you can see, we are presented with the public URLs. Let's try to navigate to the secure one and see what we get. And sure enough, we are being taken to our local web server's default page, which means our forwarding is indeed working. And in the web interface page, we can see that we are being shown all the requests that are being forwarded to this specific address. For this case, it was a get call, and this was the response. Now, to create the logic for the webhook, I'm going to place it in a folder called webhook. You can call it anything, of course. I already have this folder in my local service root directory, so please make sure that you also put this folder right next to your other local projects so that your local server has access to it. In my case, I have it right here. So my webhook folder exists in the Laragon's root directory. So let's open this up in VS Code, which I already have right in here. Let's create a new file here and call it index.php. This is going to be a very basic file. We are just checking if our exposed URLs are actually taking us to this file or not. So let's head back to the browser again. And now let's try to access the webhook directory and see what do we get. And sure enough, it's working as expected. And in this case, we have redirected and we have redirected echo, which is what we did here. Okay, great. Since we know our webhook endpoint is working, so let's try to make some use of it. Here I have a freshly created Shopify store, very basic. Now on the bottom left corner, you can see the settings option. Let's click on it. From here, we want to go to the notifications card. Now, if you scroll all the way down, you will see that we have the webhooks option here. And here it says that Shopify can send data to your webhook in one of two formats, JSON or XML. We will be using JSON format since who wants to mess with XML anyway. Now, let's create a new webhook here. In this pop-up, the most important selection that you have to make is the event one. Whatever event we select from this drop-down list will trigger our webhook call. So for this tutorial, let's just stick to a very simple product creation event right here. The format is going to be JSON. Now in the URL, let's paste our secure exposed URL. Shopify doesn't entertain non-secure URLs anyway. So let's copy this and go ahead and paste this one here. Let's keep the API version to whatever is latest. It's 2020-10 in my case, as you can see. Okay, let's finish this. So we can see that Shopify has registered our webhook successfully. From here, we can also send out test webhook data to make sure that our webhook is indeed receiving it properly. So now let's try to click on this. Okay, and an example webhook request has been sent. Let's see what do we get here. So we see that there is a post call in here, and sure enough, we are receiving data, a sample data from Shopify, and it is a JSON format, as you can see in here. If you want to dig in deeper, you can also check in the header tab and see all the other header parameters that are being passed in here. Okay, great. So now with this data in place, we can start building the logic for our webhook. So let's begin by opening VS Code again. Now we can tap into the data that Shopify sends back to our webhook using this simple PHP snippet. You will notice that we are using PHP's file get contents on PHP's input buffer, which is going to store all the request data in this variable. Now, we know that the data that we are getting is in JSON format. So in PHP, we can convert that JSON data into PHP arrays using JSON decode function. So let's call our new variable product, and let's just call JSON decode and call data in here just like that. Now to test it out, let's try to print out it and see what do we get. Let's go back to our browser. And now again, let's try to send a test request. It's sent, and now let's see what do we get. So as you can see, we have a PHP class object whose property can be easily accessed now. So let's try to access the title and ID of the product. So let's echo the product title and also echo the product ID. Oops. We can get rid of this one. And let's see what do we get this time. Let's try to send test data again. And sure enough, we do have the product title and the product ID. Okay, great. Please note that I do not recommend this coding standard at all, and I am just demonstrating a very simple example. Do not use this code in production without proper validation and security checks. Please make sure to check out the Shopify developers' official documentation on verifying webhooks. This is very important and highly recommended when you move your webhook logic to production. There you can learn about the best practices to follow and how to keep your webhook secure. You can also find some PHP examples there as well. The link to that documentation in the description below. So from this point onward, you can implement Shopify product API logic or any API logic according to your needs to create a custom functionality. If you guys would like to see how to set up this webhook over some amazing web services like Heroku so that you can push your webhook logic to production and actually use it with your own store or any of your clients' store, do let me know in the comments below. More tutorials are on the way, so make sure you subscribe to stay notified. If you have any queries or suggestions related to this video or anything at all, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.